Okay. All right. I'm just going to give a moment. There's still one or two people coming in, and then we'll get started. Okay. Must I speak a little louder? Okay, all right. If it starts echoing, just let me know. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for being here this evening. It's really nice to see such a good turnout. I must say there are some times when we're a little bit nervous about whether we're going to be core-rated or not. But we are substantially core-rated tonight, so thank you very much for everyone being here, and it is always difficult in the week, so just our sincere appreciation for that. So colleagues, my first order of business this evening, is obviously to welcome everyone. We are core-rated, and there's just to run through the agenda as it stands at the moment. Are there any additions to the agenda that anyone would like to add? Okay, I'm hoping everyone was able to download. Nothing to add at this stage. Then we'll close the agenda for now. There will be nothing else to add to the agenda at this stage. Obviously, of course, questions and answers at the end will stay open. All right, I'm going to then just ask you, I know that the minutes were shared with all the parties, so just for us to indicate if there were any corrections or add-ons to the minutes of the previous meeting. Okay, I will then ask for the board members just also to second and approve that because we are, so Emil has second and I will then also, so then the minutes of the previous meeting are approved and we can send through as that. All right, well, thank you very much. I'm then going to jump in immediately into the chairman's report, which is really just a little bit of an overview of what we've done over the last year. And then I will hand over to Emil, my colleague, to run through some of the finances with you. We'll make sure that we confirm the appointment of the auditors for next year. We'll then have the question and answer session if there is anything, and then we will close to listen to our guest speaker. All right. Colleagues, so then if I can quickly run through, so our year was a busy year in a number of instances, but also a lot of more slightly bigger projects as opposed to the smaller projects. So just again to bring everyone, to remind everyone, sorry, it's always difficult when you don't see the screen in front of you, but just to remind everyone that we look after a portion of about 86 hectares, and our biggest aim is to conserve the area. Our key achievements this year was really to make sure that the western fence was put up and finalized. So I know those of you who do walk in those areas of the Conservancy would see that has been done and dusted, and that the additional gates have also been included. And then we're very grateful to announce, and I'll speak to this in a little bit, but also to say that with the small fire that we had, and I'll also speak about that in a second, that the western fence also stood its ground. So we are really, really grateful for all of that. So before I go into any of the bigger or the more salient details, I think it's my honor and my privilege to really take this moment at the beginning to also thank the board. It's often a lot of little bits of work. It's coordinating a number of things. It's making sure that everyone is happy and that we are really fulfilling the duties that we set out to do. So before Roger runs away, I know he doesn't like the spotlight on him, but most of you know Roger. So I'm just going to ask you to all turn around and look to the back, the gentleman with a blue shirt. That is Roger. Without Roger, very little in the Conservancy would run the way it runs. Roger is everyone's right and left hand on the board at this stage. He's really the engine room of our conservancy. He makes sure that everything runs the way it runs. He makes sure that the guided walks happens. He makes sure that the two gentlemen in the conservancy do what they need to do when they do it. And he looks after them with the same amount of passion and care that they look after the conservancy. Roger looks after them. So Roger, from our side, thank you. Really, engine room of the conservancy, and we appreciate your impact. Yeah. All right, and then just the leadership team. Unfortunately, in some of their absence, some of them aren't able to be here. Joe Hemstra, Cornelie Quinn, Lucian Kompani, and Emil Snyman. Also, without the four of them, nothing would happen. And also, in a particular thank you to Emil, who has a sideline team that he sometimes ropes in to assist with certain things. So on that side as well, to Steve and his team, who help with the fires, who don't hesitate to assist, especially in the security arenas and those types of things. So it really is quite important that if it wasn't for Emil and his team, as I say, sideline team sometimes, the security in the conservancy would also not be what it is. So really our appreciation to them as well. Sorry, everything's sticking to everything tonight. Okay. All right, so maybe just again, and I say I don't want to mention this, I just wanted to mention this as one of the overarching factors, was we did speak about the western fence in a lot of detail last year. This is now the completion, and as I say, the gates and everything have been included into the fences as well. Sorry, so I'm just... sorry, ladies, I didn't realize how tiny it is even on the screen. It was much bigger in the, so my apologies if you are struggling to see this. So as far as the conservation initiatives are concerned, we are still waiting for the agreement with Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality. There have been some changes, obviously, with the elections and everything that happened. There have been a bit of a turnaround in staff. So I don't want to say we're back to square one. I don't want to be that negative, but we have sort of lost a little bit of ground as far as that's concerned. But it doesn't mean that we're not there. And also with the assistance, again, of Emil and Lucian in particular, trying to follow up and getting these types of matters sorted out. Obviously, before we can do any of our additional project, we have to get our agreement with Mangaung Metropolitan in place. So we are still in that area. Then one of the other big projects that we run on a year-to-year basis is the alien invasion species. These are really looking at all the species of plants in the conservation that shouldn't be there, that need to be removed. And it is, number one, it is kind of an ongoing process because some of it comes back. There's only so many ways that you can prevent it from coming back completely. Those of you who were at the AGM last year would have remembered that Yolandi spoke about even the birds can bring the seeds and everything back again. So it is really an ongoing process. But I think the progress we've made with the amount of the alien species in the conservancy has really it decreased a lot. So, and that's also thanks to Charles and Lucky and Roger, who really runs that at quite a long space, or at on a continuous basis. You would have maybe noticed that there's some piles of the plants lying around in the conservancy, and the reason for that is that they need to lie. Roger, you must please help me if I'm talking nonsense, but they need to be piled together, and then they sort of rot into themselves, and then they get removed again. So you shouldn't remove them immediately, but they need to sort of rot into themselves. So that's why you would have noticed some of these little mountains of plants lying in the conservancy. Okay, I'm just checking with Roger that I'm not talking nonsense. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've mentioned quite a bit about Charles and Lucky. But also they are Roger's left and right hand. They make sure that everything in the conservancy runs the way it should run. They get hands dirty in the alien species invasion or alien species invasion, making sure that that gets done. When it comes to the fire breaks, they assist. So they are really the gentlemen who, in the Conservancy, make sure that it looks and feels the way it does when you get to enjoy the environment. Then just again, we've got the 5 access points, and then of course the 6th one, which is at the Free State residence, but that's not a public entrance, so it is managed to a large extent. And then again, just as far as the fire protection is concerned, Roger, Charles, and Lucky do go to the fire training. They make sure that they stay up to date with it. We remain up to date with all our memberships and everything, so that if there are fires, that we are managed in that, or protected in that regard. And then also just again to Steve and his team, who jump in when there is anything needed in that instance. All right. If we look, we have 1,089 members. Sorry, I've got an old version in front of me and the new version on that side. I just had to do some updates quickly because this was 2 weeks ago's information and this is now's information. But we've also got a Wild Olive as a member, and they bring in a number of feet as well. And then it really is quite heartwarming for me, who's only been involved for the last 3 years now, to know that this is actually something that's been running for 30 years. And I think that is something that is really commendable. And I looked at some of going through, preparing for this evening, looking at some of the old photos on our shared drive and looking at where we are, reading through the Memorandum of Incorporation and looking at all those types of things. It really is. And I think to a number of people who are here this evening, who've been involved and supporting and walking and enjoying the Conservancy for such a long time. So yeah, it really is great. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, you would have also noticed sort of towards the beginning of the year, we sent out revised rules. The main purpose of the revised rules was really just to align to the bylaws of Mangaung and to make sure that, especially as far as the leashing of dogs and so on, that we comply with the bylaws. So there were a lot of debates and we were back and forth on a lot of things, but ultimately we had to sort of look at what the liability would be if something happened, and the best would then to be aligning to the bylaws of the municipality. So that is what we've done as far as that's concerned, and then also just to manage some of the events in the Conservancy. There were a lot of photographers coming in and out with confetti and these types of things, and just to make sure that that doesn't become a norm. So we see that quite a bit. So those were the 2 major changes in the rules that you would have noticed. It was communicated via email, it was on all the social media posts, and it is on the website for anyone who does want to double check. If you're unsure, please don't hesitate to pop us an email. Okay, all right. So then just as far as our engagement, we do have a digital presence, so please have a look on on Facebook and on Instagram. We try to also, for emails are not always in your face so much, but we really try to make sure that our communication is on both the Facebook page as well as the Instagram page, and that we communicate with email as far as we possibly can. Hopefully within maybe the next 4 or 5 months, we'll be upgrading to a better communication system. So please keep an eye on that as well. And that's also going to facilitate the sending of codes as well as the payments and that type of thing. So it will just be it will be a much more agile system. So be able to get the information in a much speedier manner. All right. And then we've had a couple of guided walks, and there are still 2 or 3 coming up for the year, specifically that have already been communicated. I know that there's a little bit of frustration regarding the size of the groups, because some people feel they fill up very quickly, but it is just the nature of these types of walks that you can't have huge groups, because not everyone then gets to see what the leaders are showing them, especially with the grasses and that type of thing. So, but we are going going to try and make a point of it to have it more regularly. So if you skip one or if you're too late, it is a first come, first served basis, but if you're too late for one, just wait for the next invitation to come out. We're trying to do it more regularly. So we've been having the bird walks and then also the grass walks, and the 2 experts that assist us with this. Also just our thanks and appreciation to them. They do it also as a favor to the conservation and for their love of the nature. So yeah, so please also keep an eye out for that. Okay, and then what we are looking forward to, and I suppose I say this a little bit optimistically, but we really are looking forward to seeing how we are able to, in more detail or with more chutzpah, get the MOU with the Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality sorted out. As I say, with a change of, or the staff turnaround, it does become a little bit difficult sometimes, but we are on that. Obviously, that will then depend on that agreement to be able to go into the spatial development framework, to be able to get the conservancy acknowledged and registered as a conservancy. Because ultimately what we want to do is to preserve this piece of land for future generations, so that we've always got this absolute gem in the middle of the city. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is my story for this evening. I'm just going to pause there and ask Emile to come and do the financial side, and then when we are done with that, then we will obviously open for some questions and comments at the end. Emile.
Shirley, dankie baie. Ek dink jy's so vinnig. I don't think people realize what happened this past year. All the effort, all the work, everything that was put into this, that Chef just reported on, it's just amazing. I think, can we please give a hand for Shirley for all the effort? It's really, really much appreciated by all of us, especially me. Julle almal het die finansies ontvang. It was part of the invitation agenda. The financial statements for 2025 was included there. If there's any questions, please, you're welcome. I'm just going to share a few highlights on the financials for the year. The financials is open for everybody to see because you're a member of our group. We are an NPC, and that's why we publish it to everybody as well. So just on the highlights, we have received the income for the year was 336,000 Rand. We had interest, we have got quite a substantial investment that we build up funds for future use for projects. So in total, we have received 373,000 for the year. Unfortunately, this year, we spent much more than we could have get in. We've got a repair and maintenance, which was our biggest portion of money that went to that. It's 504,000 Rand, and you will ask why. Why do we spend more than we have received? Because we built up some funds previous years. We've spent more than 400,000. 400 was just our contribution on the fence, on the western fence to close it off. So that was an important project for us coming for a few years. So that is where most of the money went this year. And then our normal employee costs, we've got our 2 laborers and we've got our manager that we have to look after, care for. That cost us 182,000. Our admin expenses is 29,000. It's just mostly is our auditors and then a few other admin items. That's the highlight of what we have done. So total income for the year was 373,000. We've spent 731,000 Rand. So we had a loss of 387,000. We still have, luckily, we still have some funds left that we still invest. Future projects, I think, Shirley have highlighted things that we really want to do is to do a protected area, the conservancy, to properly proclaim it as a protected area, but we will only take that on the moment we've got our MOI signed, and that is going to be quite a substantial amount as well. But I think that is one of our big, nice next projects coming. Any questions? Anything? Yes. Sorry. The Conservancy was never formally, and we've seen it, the STIA, the old environmental department, as we call it, was never formally protected or proclaimed as a protected area. So it's as we stand, it is part of the green areas within Mangaung, which is protected, supposed to be protected under Mangaung. But our biggest problem and the biggest reason for let's do a protected area conservancy proclamation is because even a municipality, which should look after this piece of land as a conservancy, wanted to sell off a piece of it. And we as members of the Friends must, if it wasn't for the pressure that we put on the Mangaung, it would have been sold. So for future use, the best we can do is let's get it protected, properly proclaimed, and then we know it will be protected forever. They can't sell it off then. That is, I hope that answers you. Great. Okay, no further questions. Then on the finances, our auditors is MRB and Partners. We've been using them for the last few years. Martelies Bester is our specific auditor. Can I ask, can we use them next year again? We need to appoint them formally through this meeting. So, Hans, if you're happy, can we? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thanks. Shirley, I think that in a nutshell. Oh, this is not my division. This is Cornelie Quinn's division. I'm just standing in for her tonight. So I thank Cornelia as well for all her effort to keep our finances very close in her hands, and she really looked after it very well. Thanks, Cornelia. I think she is online, so she will hear me. Appreciate. Thanks. Thanks, Shirley.
Dankie. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us actually to the end of the formal agenda, but we do always at this stage open for any comments, questions, and so on. So if there are anyone on finances as well, I'm not always, I've got Cornelia on WhatsApp, if there is anything on the finance side. But as Emil also mentions that despite the big spend, we're already plowing back into the investment account. So I'm not worried about the finances at all. But if there are any other questions. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So if you do see Roger or Charles or Lucky in the Conservancy, please don't hesitate to inform them immediately of it. I know that this is a little bit of an unpopular answer, but we have actually asked some of the members in the past, please take a photo for us and send it through to us. Roger has quite a good idea of most of the people in the Conservancy. Please just don't send it on a public platform. Just make sure that it gets sent to us privately, and then we do make an effort of actually trying to find the person following up with them, having a conversation with them, because rightly so. I mean, obviously, one of the big reasons for the leashing of the dogs was because of the bylaws, the Magong bylaws. But the other reason as well is because of the wildlife in the conservancy, and we do want to try and make sure that is dealt with as well as possible. So please don't hesitate. Take a photo, send it through to Roger on the email address, and Roger really does his best with Facebook stalking and whatever else he does to actually find the people and have a one-on-one conversation with them. Please. Okay. Right. No more questions. I'm very happy because Emil got quite a grilling last year, so I'm very happy that I was prepared for the same. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, then without further ado, so we had is Lucian? I said Lucian's not here. So we have a very interesting speaker with us this evening, a snake expert. There we go, Ross du Plessis. We had all these great plans of having a live demonstration, and we were given a very resounding no on that. Because of the phobias and everything that can go with that. I got a little tongue-in-cheek WhatsApp, but Roger didn't realize I'm as sharp as I am so late in the evening to say that he'd arranged with Ross just to let some of the non-venomous snakes out in the audience for the evening. Luckily, I was on top of it late last night. But yeah, so Ross, thank you so much for being here. We look very forward to listening to you and hoping to have a live demonstration in a more secure environment where we can also handle and look at some of the snakes. So thank you very much, Ross. Over to you.
Hello. So, let's see if my audiovisual cues are coming. Okay, so yeah, we'll just have a little chat about snakes of Bloemfontein. I'm going to try to keep it quite specific to our setting. Obviously, it can become quite a rambling talk if we end up doing the whole of South Africa. So yeah, who am I? I'm Ross du Plessis. I'm a specialist family physician in the public sector. I'm also a qualified and registered snake handler, and just a bit of a greenie overall. So started getting involved with all of this one evening when we could not find anyone to help remove a puff adder from our yard, and yeah, decided I should probably figure out how to do this myself then. So in South Africa, we have about 170 different snake species, of which the vast majority are not of any significance in their venom. A lot of non-venomous species, but we generally have about 20 species that are considered medically significant. That is nationwide, right? So the most common bites that do happen are from puff adders due to their very wide distribution. They are found literally all over the country. And Mozambique spitting cobras, because they have a nasty habit of hunting at night and then maybe taking a test bite at people sleeping. So luckily we don't have to deal with them here in Bloemfontein. But the most fatalities do come from black mamba and Cape cobra bites due to the nature of the venom and how it actually affects the victim that was bitten. So if you end up encountering a snake, we often get calls and we are told it's some or other snake, and you just sort of want to find out how did people actually go about identifying it. And there's certain features that you need to look at to be able to say, this is what I'm dealing with. The first thing people tend to gravitate to is color, right? It's a green snake and it's always about that long, and then you get this about that long. But you understand fear is a thing, but color is basically at the bottom of the list of the things that you need to look at to decide what you are dealing with. Primarily, know the snakes in your area. It does narrow it down significantly what you deal with. And then look at the general body shape of the snake. Is it a short, fat snake with a triangular head, or leaning more towards the adder side of things? Is it a long, slender snake? If it makes a hood, obviously you start thinking cobra, but they're not the only things that can spread hoods. It's quite important to actually try to get a look at the scales and get an idea of how shiny or dull they appear. I'll have a picture about keeled scales, but basically a lot of our snakes have what we call keels, which is like the bottom of boats, a ridge that runs along the length of the scale, and that gives them a dull appearance. And that can already help you differentiate between many species. If you look at markings, there can be some variability, but most puff adders are going to have that characteristic chevron marking down the back. Most of your brown house snakes will have a line running down the side of their head. So markings can be useful, but you should never just use one marking to try and identify snakes. And then you can actually, if you're willing to get up close and personal, get a look at the eyes and the shape of the pupil. All these things will help you differentiate what you are dealing with. So yeah, this is basically keeled versus smooth scales. So this ridge that you see running down here, this is a puff adder scales up close. That ridge is what we refer to as keels. So boomslang, Cape Cobras, most of our adder species, the Bitis family, will have these ridges. And then this is the smooth scales of a Western Natal green snake that was a hitchhiker in a truck that we found once here in Bloemfontein. So yeah, we'll just have a look at some common non-venomous ones that we often encounter around Bloemfontein. So mole snakes are very common, can be quite large, bulky snakes with no venom. They're constrictors, so something like a python, but they can have quite a nasty bite because they do have 2 rows of quite sharp teeth that you will have to deal with, and they are very strong snakes. They need to go down holes after rodents, so you've got to be pretty brave to go deal with those teeth as well. So you will see they also have some mild keels on their scales if you get close. And that's what a baby looks like. So very different looking, but quite a typical pattern with these red eyes compared to as they get older, they lose all these markings. So our grass snakes or sand snakes or whip snakes, they've got a couple of names. The common ones we find around here is the Psalmophis trinosaurus, the fork-marked grass snake, though there's some infighting about the proper scientific family they belong to. But these are fast, active diurnal snakes. So they are actively hunting lizards and small mammals, basically on rock faces and things. And I have found quite a few around the Seven Dams area, actually. Scarpstekers, these guys got a horrible name because people blamed them for cattle death, which they are definitely not responsible for. They are mildly venomous and generally here in the 50 to 80 centimeter range in length. But yeah, quite pretty snakes. Then the brown house snake and its more colorful cousin. So when I was speaking about markings, the brown house snake has this typical line that runs down the side of the head across the eye. If you see that on a brown snake, it's pretty much guaranteed. It's one of those few things that you can say one marking definitely tells you what it is. So they can get to up to about a meter, mostly eating rodents, small mice when they're small, but they can tackle some rats when they get bigger. And the Aurora house snake has this typical zipper appearance, this yellow line that runs down the body. They tend to be a bit smaller than the brown house snakes. Let's see if this plays. Okay, so this feisty little guy, putting up one heck of a show, is completely harmless, right? This is an egg eater. They do not have teeth or fangs. They live exclusively on bird eggs. But they can put up this big show, and as they rub their scales together, they make this hissing noise, and people think, oh, it's a buff adder, often to their demise, sadly. But yeah, quite long, slender snakes. This is a little wolf snake, so they've got fangs on the bottom and top jaws, which is quite interesting, so that's where they get their name. They are completely non-venomous, harmless, cute little snakes. You must just be very sure what you're dealing with when you're picking up small black snakes, as we will discuss in a moment. But yeah, quite typical of theirs is these white spots on the edges of the scales that you can see there, and that sort of triangular body shape. This is our Rooilippie, the red-lipped herald. They don't always have the orange lips, but they, most of the time here with us they do. Quite typical is these dark temples that they have. They are generally small, mildly venomous snakes that feed mostly on frogs. So 7 Dams is obviously quite a good habitat for them. The common slug eater is sadly not very common in Bloemfontein. I could really use a couple in my garden, but I've never seen one here. But they do allegedly are found here. Short, stubby little snakes with a very potent, musky smell, apparently. But yeah, like I say, never had the pleasure to meet them. So those are some of the common non-venomous guys that we do find, but obviously we do have some more potent fellows hanging around here as well. So in no particular order, this is a Rinkels. I think most people know this typical white band across the throat. They are capable of spitting their venom, the only snake in the Bloemfontein area that can do that. Typically sort of a brown to this black color. Further east in the Free State, they can have quite beautiful orange striping patterns. But just note, they don't always have the white barring. We've caught a couple that were just completely pitch black. So they're not true cobras. They bear live young, they don't lay eggs, and they have keeled scales, which the other cobras don't. They're unique in their own little family. So yeah, there's a Rinkels flinging its venom, and never pick up a dead snake. The Rinkels particularly, but we have seen other snakes do it as well, love playing dead. It's one of their defense mechanisms. They'll usually start, make a hood, throw some venom, and then if that didn't work, put up Oscar-winning show. Dying often over and over again if you flip them back around. Quite a flair for the dramatic. Then the puff adder, I think most people will know this guy. So again, heavily keeled scales, this typical chevron markings down the back, and as you can see on that distribution map, they're found everywhere. So very good camouflage. Especially in leaf litter, they can be very hard to see, and because they are predated on by so many things, their main way of staying alive is basically staying hidden. So that often leads to people stepping on them and sometimes then getting bitten. But they can also, the puff is in their name because they do puff up and make a lot of noise as well when you do get too close. They are slow moving most of the time, but they do have the fastest strike of any snake in South Africa. So they do strike incredibly quickly. People have tried to grab them behind their head and yeah, have often paid the price for a bit of hubris, I suppose. Then Cape Cobras, we do get a lot of them around Bloemfontein, particularly the western parts. They get up to around 1.8, up to even past 2 meters in size, and they vary greatly in their coloration, right? They can be anything from the brightest yellow to a speckled pattern or even almost pitch black. So this is typical juvenile markings with this dark throat, and you will see that the tail end often gets this dark coloration, darker than the rest of the body. Also, these sort of dark tears under the eyes is quite typical. And sometimes they'll make a big hood and you'll know exactly what it is, but sometimes they don't do it at all. So again, you can't rely on only one feature. Then one that we for a while thought we didn't find here anymore until a couple of years ago we found it at a colleague's house, is a stiletto snake. These are fossorial snakes, so they live underground, and they also hunt in burrows. So they have a very clever venom system where they can jab their fangs out to the side. So the effect is that there's no safe way of handling them, right? So if you try to grab them behind the head, they will just jab the fang out to the side and you will get a very painful bite. So this just illustrates their fangs there, and this is a typical defensive or threat pose that they do make, thus the stiletto name, sort of a high heel look that they do there. You can also see short stubby tails. Don't pick up small black snakes or any snake that you can't positively identify. They cause severe swelling and pain. There's no antivenom available because bites aren't that common, and the risks of antivenom is too high in relation to the damage that they do. So when we talk about snake venom, we often talk about cytotoxic, hemotoxic, or neurotoxic, and basically what it means is cytotoxic is, think of digestive enzymes being injected, right? So the snake bites you and it starts to effectively digest the muscle and the connective tissues in the area that was bitten. So typically your puff adders and your spitting cobras, including your wrinkles, will fall into that group. Neurotoxins obviously attack your nervous system. They basically block the signals from the spinal cord or the brain being delivered to the muscles, and that causes paralysis and basically prevents you from breathing. And then hemotoxic is typically our boomslang or vine snakes, neither of which we get in Bloemfontein, but they basically stop your blood from clotting and you start bleeding from everywhere, basically. So what do you do if someone was bitten by a snake? The first thing is don't run around like a mad thing. You will just speed up the spread of the venom. If you can positively identify the snake, it's great, but it's not necessary for someone to get effective treatment, right? So generally, get the person away from the snake. If there's someone who can keep an eye on it, if it's still in a house or something like that, great, keep an eye on it. But then you need to get this person to a hospital as quickly as possible, right? If you can have some way of positively identifying it, it is useful. But there's been numerous cases where someone goes to try and catch the snake, and now all of a sudden you've got 2 snake bite victims, right? So in general, safe distance. If you are 100% sure it's a Cape Cobra or a black mamba, which shouldn't be in Bloemfontein, it's not impossible, but highly unlikely, then you can actually apply a pressure bandage. So basically from the bite site, let's say you were bitten on the arm, you start where you were bitten and you apply the bandage towards your body. And this should not delay you getting to a hospital. We do not advise on putting on tourniquets, arterial tourniquets. People have lost their arms due to non-venomous bites, because the tourniquet did the damage, not the snake bite. If you are bitten by one of the cytotoxic snakes, puff adder bites, generally we suggest arm above the level of the heart, basically, so elevate it to help reduce some of that swelling, and again, just get to a hospital. That is the most important thing, right? So based on the symptoms the patient comes with, we can then decide whether antivenom is appropriate or not, and which ones to use, right? I think what goes along with this, I suppose, is what happens if you encounter a snake, right? So you're walking in Sevedama and there's a snake in front of you. Generally, if you encounter a snake in the veld, it is really easy. You take 2 steps back and you wait for it to go on its merry way, right? If it's a puff adder, it might just lie there. So maybe just take an alternative route, right? There's no reason. I've encountered a Cape Cobra or two on the bicycle, because then generally you're on them a bit quicker than they expect. But they will always try to escape. They don't turn around and come after you. There's always some guy who's got a story of the mamba that chased them on horseback or whatever. It doesn't happen. They try to get away. You're a bigger threat to them than they are to you. So yeah, let's just, and then if you encounter a snake at your home, keep an eye on it and phone someone to come and remove it, right? I often get a call and then it's like, oh yeah, we saw the snake and then we ran away. I had people get in their car and leave. They left the doors open for me and they literally drove away because they couldn't deal with it. But a snake that you can see is unlikely to do you any harm. If you don't know where it is, things change a little bit, right? So if you find a snake 3 meters away, then even the spitting snakes won't be able to reach you. And then just keep an eye on it and phone someone to come and help remove it, right? So just some confusing snakes sometimes. So our heralds have this typical pattern on the back of their heads, this sort of dark temples. And we had one clutch of Cape Cobras that in Langenhoven Park that had these very similar markings, and one of my friends actually, they went to go collect the snake and they were initially just like, oh, it's just a herald, and they were going to go pick it up, and then they realized, wait a minute, this is actually a Cape Cobra. So again, the risk of just using one trait to identify them. Our common wolf snake versus the stiletto snake. You can see they can easily be confused. For the wolf snake, much more prominent eye, a very prominent head to neck join, where the stiletto basically has none. But again, if you're uncertain, rather just leave it alone. And then our common egg eater have these V-shaped markings on the head, and that's often what is used to identify night adders. Not that we find them in Bloemfontein, but we do have them in the northern Free State. But these have keeled scales, they've got this straight slit pupil, whereas the night adder has a round pupil and a much more chunky body, and no keeled scales. And then occasionally we get the call out for the big Cape Cobra, and you get there and it's just a yellow mole snake. So they can look quite similar, but they tend to be considerably more heavy-bodied and not such a prominent head-to-neck sort of join. Yeah, so occasionally we get call out for baby puff adders, and then it's a baby mole snake or egg eater as well. So yeah. So yeah, often you find them in strange places. Generally, just keep your distance. Make sure you keep an eye on it. This puff adder was obviously in an engine bay. That was less fun to get to. But yeah, typical garden setting, or even occasionally at your work. So yeah, avoiding snakes is don't be me, okay? That was a mole snake trying to get it out of the hole, which was challenging. Don't buy snake repellent or Jay's fluid or throw diesel or whatever. None of those things work. The only ways to try and avoid snakes in your yard is to make sure the yard stays clean, avoid large compost piles, rock gardens and things like that. Anything that's going to either attract mice or lizards will eventually probably attract snakes as well. And one of the fascinating experiences, people who live in next to wildlife areas because they love the nature, and then they get upset when the nature comes to them. So yeah. But yeah, there's some numbers. Currently, I am rather swamped, so I rarely am able to go on call out at the moment. But even if you contact me, we will send the message onto the network, and someone will be able to come and help. Yeah, the African Snakebite Institute has a list on their website, so even if you're in another town, you'll generally be able to find the snake catchers wherever you are. They also have wonderful resources, posters that you can print for free, and things on first aid, and about once a year they do come to Bloemfontein with snake handling courses. Let's see. Little baby Cape Cobra. Any questions? Yes, sir. So if you've got a spitting cobra, 4 meters is plenty. They are not going to attempt to spit at that range, and even if they did, they won't be able to reach you. So, yeah. And for strikes of a snake, generally you can say about half their body length, but occasionally a puff adder will lift themselves off the ground as they strike, especially the slightly smaller ones. So, yeah. A lot of momentum behind those strikes sometimes. Yes, sir. Okay, so first question, yes, there are snakes in Bloemfontein, otherwise I'd be very bored and not have half the pictures I showed you. But, I mean, if you're living in the middle of town, you might get a brown house snake or something. You're unlikely to get some of the bigger, more interesting ones. Areas in 7 dams, I mean, I must be honest, I've gone looking for them to take pictures of them, and I rarely find them. So I would not try to avoid any specific area. Like I've encountered, like I say, on my bicycle, 1 Cape Cobra, and when I've gone looking, I found 1 scarpsteker and one of those little red-lipped heralds. So yeah, there's not a lot of them. Yeah. Yes. At your least favorite neighbor. No, so it depends. So if we catch something venomous like a Cape Cobra, generally we'll go further out of town to go release them. You generally don't want to go, the sort of arbitrary cutoff is 10 Ks from where you caught them. You don't want to go further than that, because then you start messing with the genetic spreads and spread of diseases within the population. So if it's a non-venomous brown house snake, you'll find the closest appropriate piece of wild area, right? So often in Langehoven Park, there's fences around some of the conservation areas where, I mean, it's a brown house snake. It's not going to do anyone any harm. Otherwise, you do need to drive out quite a bit. So it does take quite a bit of time, and at the end of the day, resources to do the catch and releases. Yeah. Sure. No, I can't. I'm sure he can. Geelslang, koperkapel, ja, allemaal dieselfde ding, ja. And sure. Thanks, everyone.
All right, I'm very glad for 2 things. I'm glad that between the types of venom and please join us for something to eat, there was a bit of a break, because that whole digestion thing got me a bit concerned. And for those of you who don't know, does everyone know what a tourniquet? What did you say? Does everyone know what that is? Oh, I had to Google it. Okay, I'm glad everyone's smarter than what I am. That's great. Okay. For those of you who don't know, it's when you constrict the veins so that the blood doesn't flow. I had to Google it, okay, but I'm okay with admitting my shortcomings. Ross, thank you so very much. That was incredibly informative, and yeah, I don't always think that you can make snakes that much fun, but fun as well. Really, really lovely. So maybe just another round of applause. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if there's nothing further, any last burning questions, then please join us for something to eat and drink in the back. There are some vegetarian dishes as well. If anyone is vegetarian, please just ask either Roger or myself, and we can just show you to the vegetarian dishes. But other than that, there's some things for us to eat and drink in the back. Thank you very much for everyone's attendance. Much appreciated. And please carry on enjoying and looking after the Conservancy as well as you do. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.